Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fridays at 5. I'm Karen Taylor of the Color Vowel Chart, here with my co-author, Shirley Thompson. Hi, Shirley. And our lead phonologist, Robin Barr. Good to see you. And just our whole cast of characters. Our theme this week is related to what's going on right now, today, and tomorrow, and that is the Psllt Conference. That's the Pronunciation in Second Language Learning and Teaching Conference. Big mouthful. This was started up about, gosh, I think this might be the 13th year, maybe the 12th. And it's a really wonderful little specialty conference that's not just about teaching English language pronunciation, but rather second language pronunciation. So when I went a couple of years ago to that conference in Flagstaff, for example, there were probably, I think there were about 300 people there, and they were from all over the world. You know, there were Japanese teachers who teach Japanese as a foreign language and were interested in second language acquisition of Japanese pronunciation, for example, or say a Brazilian academic interested in acquisition of, you know, another language that isn't English. So all kinds of folks studying all kinds of things, largely academic, but also very practical. And so you have sort of the two edges of the field, the academic and the practitioner side, coming in and milling around and bumping up against each other. The last 2 years have been online, meaning last year during pandemic, and of course right now. Today was the first day of the full conference, and then tomorrow is the second day with teaching tips. And as we continue talking today, I may show you a couple of clips of some of the history of it, but otherwise we're here to hear from those who have been in that conference today, sort of really fresh with content. I know, Nancy, you were there today and your brain is full. You might have a few things to share with us. Skip was there. Glad to see that, or Skip's going tomorrow for teaching tips, right? Okay. So Nancy, you might be the main informant today, if you want to share some things. And Teresa, have you been to that conference before, or is this your first glimpse?
Sorry, this is my first glimpse. So I'm excited. Those of you who went.
Yeah, good. So this is, and it was founded by Dr. John Levis, who's out of University of Iowa. He brought together, you know, the very earliest conferences in Iowa. And since then they've migrated to different academic campuses. Most recently, it's kind of stuck at Brock University in Canada. And so but it does move around, and you'll see that it kind of moves from place to place, but always hosted at a university by a faculty member who keeps it small and lower cost than a lot of the big conferences. So it remains very much I don't know, it's all about the people kind of thing. Whereas the bigger conferences move into a whole new scale. I'm going to go ahead and invite Gemma into the room. Gemma is coming in, and she is a member of a couple of organizations, but has been at the Psllt as well. So we'll watch her come in. Hey, Gemma, good to see you. Oh, Gemma, it's kind of late where you are, isn't it?
It's about 10 past 10 in the evening. So I'm just popping in for a wee while.
Wonderful. We're glad to have you. You've been at the Psllt all day, right?
For most of the day, I haven't participated in as much of what is my evening time lectures and sessions, but hoping to catch up on the recordings.
Fantastic. Great. Well, that leaves two of you in the room who have been at sessions today, two of us that are going tomorrow to the teaching tips, including a session by you, Gemma. We'd love to hear about that in advance. But let's go ahead and just get started with, I know, you know, Nancy's been there. Nancy, can you share one of the sessions that you've been to? We'll kind of take it like that in pieces. Okay.
I had a lot of fun, and I actually, with this session, because the presenter is a Brit who is in France, and the other woman who was presenting is in Ohio, but she had an accent that wasn't North American, so I don't know where she originally was from. What was fun was exactly what I was doing with my students this week that I posted on, look at me doing this, that I posted on the Facebook page about, there was one with the vowels, not the vowels, but guess the accent. And she did, her name is oh gosh, it was Zizzy. Anyway, they had done a study to see of the British accents, which ones they understood the best. And of course, I don't know much about the British accents, but I will say I had a lot of fun with my students trying to guess where the accent was from in the English speaking world. And the thing had 22 ones where they were guessing, and she was talking about, I was trying to think, she said that Leeds, again, excuse my ignorance of UK geography, but I think she said Leeds was the hardest one, and Cambridge, I apologize, I don't remember which one, but she said there was one that surprised her that was the most accessible to her students. But
yeah, that's fascinating you mentioned that, because I have to say, I know for a fact that Gemma actually does research in this area. So, so Gemma, could you speak to how that intersects with what Nancy's sharing?
It's really interesting. Do you know, I didn't attend that session. I must have a look and watch the recording. But it's interesting because Leeds is in the north kind of central area of England, in Yorkshire, which is in an area called the Scandinavian Belt. So it has all of these really interesting kind of Scandinavian influences in kind of Yorkshire English. I love it. I think it's really characterful, but it's interesting that, you know, students are finding it a bit more challenging to understand. I think also it's because we don't get so much access to it. You know, even here in the UK, all of our media is BBC English. There's not a huge amount of diversity, unfortunately. So it's interesting that the students are finding that more challenging.
Well, this whole thing started with one of my students who they're all in their externships. These are all medical assistants, if those of y'all that don't know the group I'm teaching. And she had someone from India that came into the clinic and realized that these are Spanish speakers, and English is really super, super second language for them. And she was having a hard time understanding. And I said, well, gosh, you know, my best friend's from Calcutta, and I just like to listen to him because I don't understand half what he says. And I've known him for 20 years. I'm better now. So I said, you know what would be fun is to see if you guys could, to get some of the accents and see if you guys could recognize them. So I found this YouTube video that I shared, and I was surprised at which ones they got. And I didn't say, you know, what part of England, because I didn't know myself. So that wouldn't have been, and then America, there were like five British, four American, and then 2 Irish, and then the rest were just single areas. I was still Welsh and all, but they were having a hard time picking out, believe it or not, the Canadian one. They thought everybody was Canadian. So it was interesting.
That reminds me of sort of those of you that remember the Amy Walker videos. There she is.
I was 25 years old.
I will stop that. Is anyone familiar with the Amy Walker video series? It's sort of viral, one of the earliest. Here, I'll just play it just so we kind of have that. And my question will be, and this is for several of you in the room, especially Dr. Barr and Dr. Archer, is about, you know, I was kind of surprised to hear that there is a dialogue going on about some accents being more comprehensible than others for second language learners of English. I think my, you know, I just sort of, my intuition was to say as a linguist that they're all equally comprehensible depending on how much access you have to them. You know, I wanted to be very equitable about it all. So to hear that there's research going on about this is fascinating to me. As you think about what we might want to focus on here, I just thought I'd share Amy Walker. Here she is. And so this has been around for quite a long time, 2008, since sort of almost the advent of Facebook, when this got shared quite a bit. But here she is.
In England. You're right, I'm Amy Walker. I'm 25 years old and I was born in London, weren't I? Yes, hello. My name is Amy Walker. I'm 25 years old and I was born in London, England. That's right. My name's Amy Walker and I was born in Dublin, Ireland. Hi, how are you? I'm Amy Walker. I'm 25. I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Of course I'm Scottish. I'm a walker, aren't I? You know, walker like the shortbread. It comes in a wee tin with a turtle on it. Buongiorno, my name is Amy Walker and I'm from Italy. Guten Tag, my name is Amy Walker. I'm 25 years old and I was born in Berlin, in Germany. Hello, my name is Amy Walker. I was born in Prague, which is called Praha, in Czech Republic. Hello, my name is Amy Walker and I'm from Moscow.
All right, so she is an actress who's creating a bit of a, say an audition tape, right, to show that she has all these different capacities. How'd you feel about that Scottish accent, Gemma?
It wasn't the worst I've heard.
All right. So is there research that's really pointing to the idea of a most comprehensible variety of English for second language learners, regardless of where they are, or does it have to do with where they are?
I haven't come across any, and please, if anyone knows, feel free to tell me otherwise. I haven't come across anything that says there's one accent above all that everyone will comprehend or find intelligible. I find it really interesting because, for my students, they all say, oh, I want a native speaker accent, or I want a prestige accent, but they can't identify one when they're listening to it. So I think it's it's all a very kind of funny there's so many variables influencing what people find intelligible, and yeah, so far I haven't come across anything that's pointed to one in particular, other than the kind of major models that are in everything, the kind of standard American, standard British, but that's just me in particular.
I saw some interesting research that, for example, Japanese speakers find a Jamaican accent easier to understand because it too is syllable timed. So if you come from a syllable timed accent, then and you may have been hearing syllable timed English from your syllable timed teachers, then a syllable timed accent will be easier to understand. Also, people who speak in underlying forms, as teacherese. So no fast speech rules. Don't drop any letters. So an R-full dialect. That's something that since it's print based, is not necessarily what we want to teach our students, but it is easier for them to comprehend, which is why we probably lapse into it when we're teaching, because everybody can understand us better if we talk like the book.
Yeah. Then we end up with that phenomenon where they say, teacher, I understand you perfectly, but I don't understand anybody else. They're evil.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm not doing my job. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, just as a second language Spanish speaker, and this is just because I'm on the border and I've worked with immigrants coming in from Central America, and then immigrant and colleagues from the Caribbean. I've been exposed to a lot of different Spanishes, and I'm actually have a lot of empathy for my ESL students with the English, because I struggle with particularly the Caribbean accents. I struggle a lot with them, and I've got a lot of friends that have it. So I know that, I don't know, Robin, if there is an easier one. I know that my Spanish is Mexicano, and so that's I know I can pick them out, but I can't tell
the Caribbean accents, especially if they drop the S before consonants, that makes it very difficult.
Robin, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's just like an R drop accent for English, except that the prestige accent, if it's BBC English, drops the R anyway. But so intelligibility doesn't necessarily count as being prestigious.
No. So anyway, I just want to point that out.
It's just fascinating. There's also a whole lot of research on affect of different dialects, which I find fascinating. So a lot of sociolinguistic research about which dialect of English sounds most educated, sounds the most upper class, sounds like they have the most money. Would you like to have as a friend? Would you hire? All of these different things. And generally speaking, at least in the British Isles, it's BBC English is considered educated but stuffy, so you wouldn't want to be their friend. And then whatever accent is right is most like your own is obviously the one that you think you would want to be friends with. But lots of really interesting research on that area.
Well, tell me, I'm curious how many, in terms of attending this conference, how many sessions have you gotten to attend? And, you know, how does that work? Are you feeling like you're able to focus in on a topic fairly deeply? These sessions are a little bit shorter than conventional conventions, right? The format of PSLT is kind of unique. So the sessions are a bit shorter, and I'm just curious how you've interacted with that. And that's for Nancy and Gemma and anybody else.
Nancy, you're on mute.
Yeah.
I just unmuted. Thank you. Sorry about that. I actually was having a little bit of trouble because the program for the conference, I printed off so I could read it, a hard copy, and it doesn't print off very well. It's so I'm having to go to the online, the one that I've got on my Adobe. So in answer to your question, I'm trying to do, you know, speakers or stuff with teaching pronunciation and, you know, with L1, or not necessarily L1 Spanish speakers, but just, you know, the phonetic symbols and that kind of thing. So, you know, I've gotten interested in this HPVT, or what it's called.
That's quite the catchword these days. The high frequency.
So I was going to do that, and I think I just got tired.
Yeah, I think Jennifer went to that. Gemma, can you tell us that acronym? It's high. What is it?
Variability phonetic or pronunciation training.
Yeah. Can you tell us what that is?
There's quite a lot of it at the moment in this conference, which I think is really interesting. It's about basically Ron Thompson has this website, which is an example of HVPT in action, and students use it for perceptual training. So they listen to a range of different voices producing the same sound, and it's supposed to increase their ability to perceive and distinguish the sounds. And it's had quite a lot of success. I've heard of late, and yeah, it's really interesting to see if they can mold it into a more kind of classroom friendly practical form. It'd be really interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm just putting into the chat I think it's a publicly accessible object, which, you know, that way I feel comfortable sharing it, but it's the abstract book. So you can go to this website and you'll be able to read up on all of the different presentations that are being offered there, as well as the timetable and so forth, which is separate from the access itself. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think Jennifer went to that, if I can quote her. She thought maybe there's a problem of the fun aspect of this kind of approach to high repetition, you know, exposure to these frequencies. Doesn't it? What are the motivational issues that come up in that kind of approach?
It's interesting because Ron Thompson did a session for us at Untitled Chapter just last weekend, and he was talking about this, and he said that that's a really important point, the motivation factor, and he was comparing the HVPT with another more popular kind of app for pronunciation training, and he was saying that that app was kind of more, you know, giving rewards, well done, you know, you've reached this stage, and kind of trying to encourage the participants to keep going. And he said that that's not something that they had in their app. So he said that the motivation was definitely not as high as in other different forms and other different apps and websites and things, and that's what they want to kind of try and improve. You know, it's definitely not got all the bells and whistles that Blue Canoe has, that kind of keeps you engaged and motivated. So I think that's the direction that they want to try and take it in.
Well, I'd be interested in ideas. You know, I wasn't able to attend today, but any one of us who has ideas for Blue Canoe, and, you know, infusing some of the more recent methodologies into it, I'd love to consider that. You know, just ideas. Great. Anything else? What else did you see, Nancy, that you'd like to share today? Anything else? Oh, she's still muted there.
This was interesting because the accents one, I met quote unquote woman who teaches in France. And she was doing she did a study with Chinese students at the University of Paris. And she was had these two apps that would give the prosody, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, if it's prosody, of the French language. And with this app, it showed the wave of how the voice goes up and down with certain French sentences. And with this particular, this guy's name was Philippe Martin, and I'm sure I'm butchering that, but it was interesting because she saw a huge improvement on the Chinese students studying French with that app versus where it was a listen and repeat kind of thing.
And what was that app? What was it?
It was called WIT. I mean, I can get it for you, but the name of the author of the app is Philippe Martin or Martin.
Okay.
And she was comparing using that, and the students had French. They had studied English as a second language in China, as well as had several months of French. So they weren't ranked beginners of French, but they were all studying French at the University in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting to see. And I got into it because I was telling her how much trouble I was having hearing the French, the spoken French in my own studies. And so it was, again, the whole thing was to get that. She said that once you understand the prosody, or however you say that word.
Prosody. Everybody try it. Olive, sock, prosody.
Prosody. There you
Olive,
go.
sock, prosody.
I know. I looked it up. Olive, sock, prosody. Once you got the prosody, then you and understood how that was working. That she also said their comprehension went up, which makes sense. And I was like, I need this.
Yeah.
I pretty much said, can I have
Now,
this?
this sounds like it's intonation matching, right?
It is, Robin.
Yeah.
It is. And I thought, my gosh, this would have helped me. I was really having a wonderful time in France, but I think it would have helped me a lot just as a beginner French student. So anyway, that was neat. So her name was Dara, Darya, and she was a PhD linguist and all.
Fantastic.
So I enjoyed that.
And I see a comment over here from Gemma just about IELTS. Can you tell us about the voice actors you're talking about? It's in IELTS. What aspect of IELTS? I thought that was a professional development organization.
In the listening aspect, they use voice actors rather than regionally accented speakers. I mean, I'm not sure if that's 100%.
You mean for the testing?
Yes.
Wow.
And the people who are doing the reading the passage are putting on a not their own accent.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Oh, that's kind of devious,
Creepy.
Yeah,
there's something strange about it.
Why would they do that?
I had brought it up
it's
because
like there are no voice actors other than from a tiny part of the world.
I see what you're saying, not just actors, but just voice talent, like finding people who know how to be in a studio and use a microphone correctly.
That's perverse. I mean, that's well, okay.
Right.
it's interesting. I had brought up the question because I teach students, I prepare them for the IELTS exam, and they always say the listening is just so difficult. They don't understand. There's so many different accents, and they at the end of their exams, they'll say like, oh, the listening went the worst. And so I was looking for resources. How do I help them? I've always encouraged them to listen to the BBC because IELTS is a British exam, but I don't think it helps that much. So if there's any other ideas.
Nowadays, it's also part owned by the Australian organization, IELTS, and I can't even remember the name, but there's a lot more Australian influence now as well.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Well, speaking of accents, I had an interesting question come up this week from a teacher recently trained in Color Vowel. and he's in Malaysia. And he asked, a neat question. He said, does purple shirt work for Commonwealth speakers of English? Or is, the way he put it is purple shirt the same? And, which is itself an interesting way of asking the question. And so we got into this discussion where, sort of said, okay, well, I think it started off with questions of our control, frankly. And so I want to kind of just see if we can visit this together. If we talk about words like here, there, and say here, there, car, for, and say tour. In English, American English, North American English is we'll move all the way into purple. But his question pertained to what happens to British and this notion that they drop the R. And this is the phrase I want to focus in on. And I said, well, I don't think British Englishes really do drop completely the R, but rather they don't go all the way to purple. So there's here, there, right? Something that's up here. So my question is, how do we want to talk about that when we have this version of the color vowel chart?
Yeah, I would call it a syllabic R, except you've removed the R-ness of it. So it turns into a schwa for some, and it turns into a front rounded vowel, like for purple. Purple. It's not, you're not moving when you say
it's not pupple. Well, in fact, it's funny right now, as I say this and as I share this question, we have Jishen joining us in the room who asked the question originally. So now we have the source. And so we'll just
awesome. So I mean, if you think about purple, if you say purple, but unretroflex your tongue, you get some kind of rounded frontish vowel. It is not book. It's not the same as wooden hook. It's more
purple. Yeah.
Purple.
So I'm welcoming Jishen. He's in the room now. We're on this question of purple and as it behaves. And so what I started thinking about was just how hard it was to talk about this British treatment, or say Commonwealth treatment, of purple shirt, so long as we call it purple shirt. And I thought, in the Commonwealth chart, we have different names for these back vowels. We call this olive bottle and oben phone, so that we have room for tomato cot. Those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show you briefly. But I wonder if we need to do this also for purple, so we can make a distinction between the purple of North American Englishes, which would be purple shirt, and the purple of Commonwealth Englishes that is more often like a purple skirt, something like that. Maybe we need a different noun.
It's still high. It's just not. It's just not retro. The tongue isn't doing its R thing.
So it could still be here.
Yeah, it's still.
But it might have a different noun. If we want to talk about the
purple shirt, they would still rhyme, right?
It still rhyme just as well. Yeah, I suppose so. That's what we're doing.
Gemma, maybe you're a better native speaker of this than I am. Would purple shirt still have the same vowels if it's R-less?
I always assumed that it was falling back into kind of schwa. I didn't really look into it beyond that, to be perfectly honest.
How would you say it?
Well, I'm slightly different because I have a bunched R, and it's called schwa, which is a feature of middle class standard Scottish English. It's not exactly the same. So what I say is far closer to what is said in American English than it is in standard British English.
Yeah. So could you pronounce it for us?
Purple.
Yeah. So she doesn't drop the R. But,
right.
But this is where you get those triphthongs that the Oxford Dictionary is so proud of. Heya and hiya and so forth. But it's really it's not three vowels in one syllable. It's at least two syllables, and with the last one being a syllabic R.
Yeah, this is a little bit, I mean, if we were talking about just the word flower in North American English, that's doing the same thing, right? Only it's just a second syllable. Just for those who were curious what we were referring to in the Commonwealth, this is the Commonwealth edition of the color vowel chart. And we have it available now on our Redbubble shop because it ships internationally. So it's pretty exciting stuff. But as you can see, we have, some changes down here. And the only question I was raising was was, do we want to have a different noun, not because purple and shut don't rhyme in Commonwealth Englishes, but rather as a way to name, to distinguish which purple we're talking about. The British or Commonwealth
I see what you're saying.
variety
Well,
versus
what you're going to have to do for our colored vowels is some of them are going to are going to end with purple, and some of them are going to end with high schwa or even low schwa.
right
So
up
that,
here.
so that you know, mustard of some sort. So that's
Right.
going to, so the explanation of our colored vowels is going to be a little different.
So here,
Yeah.
there, right about
Yeah.
here. Then
Yeah.
you have fa,
Yeah.
right? It's a truly dropped R.
And if you're saying hair, that could come out as just black cat with nothing after it.
Ha.
Ha.
Okay, ha.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, hair. Okay, great. So that's just some thoughts there on R. Jishin, if you have more questions to share about that, you're welcome to put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, we're just here sharing findings from this conference that some of us are attending and raising other questions in general. And so I shared your question from earlier in the community.
Thank you for
Appreciate
the question,
that.
Jishin.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Thank you for the question. It was interesting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
I haven't quite worked out who went to which talks.
Well, we think
Nancy
we have two people in the room who've gone to some talks. Gemma, I know you've been on and off with your nighttime schedule. Are there any other talks you've gone to?
One that I really enjoyed was by Alice Henderson, and she is based in Grenoble in France. And she does a lot of work on accents too. And she was running a kind of training with students to try and help them with their kind of feelings towards other types of accents, to try and help them increase their, I don't know, openness to different accents. And it turned into a kind of intercultural training event that she was running with lots of different questions to make them kind of consider their opinions about accents and how they can, you know, improve their comprehension by changing their opinion and their attitude and things. And I think Robin, just metalinguistic attitudes, is that right, Robin? Yeah, it was really interesting. And she was saying that they've got, they're now kind of, the university is now trying to take that training and insert it into different places. So for example, places like, you know, the cafeteria staff, or, you know, different areas of the university where there's going to be this intermingling of international students and non-international staff. So it was really, really interesting. And I think she kind of also brought in the study by Tracy Derwing, which was the social workers in the Vietnamese social workers, or there was another study which was trying to improve L1 speakers' kind of perceptions and understanding of international accents. So it was a really interesting talk.
Wonderful. We all need more work on accent equity and discrimination, and, you know, forming openness and having ways to talk about that.
I know that's something that Brock Brady has wanted to do for a long time, just to have training in this kind of accent equity. I remember when I was teaching at Northeastern, we had a lot of trouble with I guess it was the English department TAs would downgrade anybody who was not speaking and writing American English. So I said, where did they get the word dreamt? And I said, well, that's perfectly standard in English. It's not a mistake. I said, well, they should speak American. We're in America. And I thought, okay. So I got a grant and I brought William Labov up to talk about different accents. And when we thought maybe we would have training in you know, accent acceptance, but the only people who came to these workshops were the people who didn't actually need to be trained in it. So
this is the hardest part, is finding the very people
yeah.
that we wish would take these kinds of workshops. So it's the question. That is If anyone has a good idea on that, let us hear it. How do you find precisely the ones that say, I don't understand you? Certainly, I know where they hang out, but it's hard to attract them to professional development.
Well, this was particularly important for the people who were grading papers. You know, we wanted to get them to stop doing what they were doing, but they weren't the ones who showed up.
Yeah. Good. Well, we're excited to see what happens tomorrow. Gemma, you're presenting tomorrow in a teaching tips section. I think this is another brilliant bit, you know, in a conference that can seem otherwise extremely academic or research oriented, is they reserve a special time for practical teaching tips. And it's the same kind of process. You submit a proposal and they select or not. And so Gemma will be in there. And Gemma, what's your tip going to involve?
So the tips that I have are about kind of similar to what I just mentioned. It's about trying to increase tolerance among L2 students of accent diversity. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but certainly for my students, they're always moaning that they can't understand anyone that, you know, has a different accent to what they're used to. So the tips just kind of come from, it was 5 tips in particular that come from research that I've done and experiences that I've had and things that I've read, which have worked really well for me in my classroom.
Wonderful.
One of the
Good.
problems in this area is that a lot of our international students say that Black people can't understand me and I can't understand them. And so it winds up being not just accent intolerance, but racial intolerance. And it's hard to know what to do about that, except possibly expose them more to the different dialects of the area.
Well, and to use the color vowel chart, frankly. I mean, it's such a great touchstone for demystifying the differences between one accent and another. And some of you have already heard my story about this, but it's always a good one. You know, I was teaching in Delaware, a group of teachers a couple of years ago, several years ago. I think Shirley, you were there, and Shirley's not here right now, but Shirley was with me at that conference, at that particular training. And we had one group broken out. It was a lot of people, about 30 different teachers. And so we had some in a separate room for the kinder through 5th grade, I think.
There she is.
Yeah.
Shirley, we're talking about Delaware.
We're talking about Delaware. And we had this upper group, and I think you might have been with the lower grade group in the other room, possibly. I'm not sure. But I had these high school teachers, and we were doing poetry analysis with color vowels, just figuring out, you know, what's the rhyme scheme? Like, oh, it's, you know, blue, blue, white, white, or what have you, looking at rhyme. And in the middle of this conversation, in a big circle, suddenly there was this sort of eruption of very distracting noise where everybody turned, because one teacher said, listen to her. So we all stopped and we all looked at the one who had said this, and she said, say it again. And she pointed to this teacher who was now clearly on the spot. And she sort of looked around. She said, say it, really, let everybody hear it. And so she said, poem. And so she was saying the word poem, but she had her way of saying poem. And the first lady who had said this said, see, as if, you know, we were all going to break out into laughter or something. And it was a little awkward. I mean, it was definitely, you know, this one person was on the spot. She was being very, you know, calm about it. I think she felt on the spot, but she wasn't, you know, horrified at least outwardly. But all of us, you know, didn't know what to do. And so I just said, huh. I said, so what's going on here? Like, let's look at the chart. What's happening here? You know, how do you think it should sound? And the first lady said, well, it's poem. And so we figured out, you know, what color is poem? What color is poem, by the way? Poem.
Rose boat.
Yeah, so rose, boat, poem, with how many syllables? Poem. So she was using 2. I said, okay, so how about, you know, teacher number 2? How is she saying it? And they say it again, you know. So again, she's on stage. Poem, like this. And so what's the difference? What's the difference between poem?
Is it one syllable?
One syllable, right? And
turquoise.
Sounds like
turquoise, that's right now. So she's saying poem, turquoise, toy, poem, as opposed to poem, poem. And by the time we got to that, it was all just like, oh, okay. So she says it with turquoise, the other one says it with rose, we're all set. You know, it just completely neutralized the conversation from look at her to, oh, look at this, they're right next to each other on the chart. Yeah, it was fascinating. And it to me, it was just, I was very thankful to have a way to shift the conversation into an objective place where we could just talk about sound. Yeah. What other kind of instances? I'm curious. Are there other stories like that out there of
Well,
linguistic shaming or, you know, discussions where this might help?
I just find it really interesting that, you know, I mean, I've been down around through Peru a lot and I know very little Spanish, but all the taxi drivers always understand me because they want to. They're open to it. So it's really true. I mean, it's like,
they understand you when you speak Spanish.
yeah, when I speak Spanish, I'll be like, you know, that's too expensive and I want this price, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, it's not much, but they were so much more open than, you know, it's.
Well, I can tell a story on myself. When I was in Paris, the taxi drivers could not understand me, but they could understand my daughter, who had been brought up in the Montgomery County immersion schools, French immersion program. And I was very embarrassed because of course I was the mother and I was the professional linguist and they weren't understanding me. And I thought my French was damn good. But it turned out what I was doing was I was using English stress rules. And I was being stress timed. And so when I would say, like, for example, 40, which is 40, it came out as 40, which they interpreted as 30, which is 30, for example. But my daughter was using the syllable timed pronunciation. And as soon as I realized what was going on, suddenly I was comprehensible too. Because I could then shift into if I thought about it, you know, stressing every syllable, or, you know, in my mind, stressing every syllable, then it worked. But it was horrible because, of course, they would try to shift into English, which was very embarrassing and not very successful either. So
You have to decide, is your English worse than my French or vice versa? When they all want to be good. Other stories.
You're in Paris, their English is always better than your French.
Probably true in most parts of the world, and their English is better than whatever we're trying to speak. I have a story that Karen, I'm sure, has heard a million times, but when I played the role of Karen Taylor when she was down in Mexico, I think that was when I taught the 006, which was the advanced pronunciation class it was called Advanced American English Pronunciation at University of Maryland. And one semester I had 2 or 3 Indian TAs who, and one in particular who was absolutely outraged that he had to take a pronunciation class. And I felt like it was this major goal on my part was to win this guy over, because, you know, he was a really nice guy, super smart, but he was very offended that he had to take English pronunciation. And I said, remember, we're talking about American English pronunciation. And I said, if I were going to go and teach in India, do you think that students might have a hard time understanding some things that I said? And yeah, he finally kind of agreed, yeah, you know, whatever. And then by the time the semester went on, I think that just the idea that if you learn a little bit more about pronunciation, you can begin to predict areas that might cause problems. Or if you say something and somebody doesn't understand you, if you're an Indian speaker, you might start off with saying, aha, do I have the stress on a different syllable? Which is one of the key things that happens with speakers of Indian English. And by the end of the semester, he was very grateful. And he came back like almost a year later to tell me that he had been voted the top TA in his department. So a success story. But one of the things that was really hard for me was to go from saying, this is how we say it in English, which I had been doing for decades, to saying, this is how we say it in American English, or at least my version of American English.
Well, then it is always a question, like, how narrow do you go? You know, if they have a low level of English to begin with, you don't want to get into the many different kinds, but then you do want to get into regions, and then it all gets relative. And then is there any one right way to do anything? And it's interesting how we have to find our place to settle, not too narrow, maybe not too deep. And that's an ongoing strategy challenge for me. Nancy.
I have an opinion question for you guys. I posted on the Color Vowel community the dialect coach, Eric Singer, who I don't know if any of you all have heard of, but he fascinated me in his tour of North American English from, United States all the way through. And he had several linguists from Native Americans, from the Spanish speaking world, from the Black and from the Asian. So it was very interesting there. But my question is this, and the reason is that there was a very, very small portion talking about the influence of English of Mexican Spanish in the Southwest, which is where I live, and I'm teaching Mexicans. And I had, before I discovered the color chart a couple of classes ago, I found some YouTube videos on the hardest phonemes for Spanish speakers to have in English. And so I was going through, and one of them was the ending S versus Z sound. So it was the unvoiced and the voiced. Now, my question to you is this. In Eric Singer's video, they talked about that the Z sound in American English, native speaker English, going to an S sound because of the Spanish speaking population in this part of the world where I'm living. And then I started thinking about it, and because I was teaching them to try to do the Z, the voiced Z, and not to do the soft S, just because it was more comprehensible. But now that I saw that, I'm kind of like, maybe they were talking into, I don't know. Should I bother with that, or what do you think?
Sure. But something interesting is that in Texas, local pronunciation is also Texas.
Right, but realize, Robin, I'm in like really West Texas. Like I'm further west than places like Denver. So they don't even count us as we're the only blue politically in the whole state.
But my point is that the English of Texas doesn't uniformly devoice the Z to an S. So I think it's something that should still be taught.
Okay, I just,
yeah.
I was like,
especially if in the ones where you added the extra syllable, like horses, that's going to need to be voiced.
Oh, no, that definitely. But that was something that, how do you get the accent that you're a native Spanish speaker? And it's a beautiful accent. I always tell them, I said, when you guys have your English, it's going to be gorgeous. When you have it down to where you're talking, it's beautiful. And I mean that very sincerely. But again, comprehensibility is the key there. And so, that was one area that they weren't voicing and unvoiced. And realize, Robin, that El Paso is 85% Hispanic. You do not need English in this city to live. So it's a very different than, most parts of Texas.
But arguably they do need English somewhere, somehow, because they're in a class with you. So I think that's a big challenge, right?
No, it is. It was a matter of, am I taking an accent away from them that, is sort of, or I think I'm going to teach. I think I've just decided to go ahead and teach it. But
I think
you should teach your own accent.
Robin, I am doing that. I've always believed in that, and
well, there's also a very interesting conversation going on actually in our community right now about the responsibility, or the idea of I won't I won't share the entire conversation, but the strong argument would be that it's irresponsible to not address something that you know could be addressed if all the other bigger priorities are already in place. So if you already have down your students are doing really well with stress and all of the big deal breakers, and you're still noticing this difficulty with voiced, unvoiced, or adding a syllable S, what have you, a strong argument would say that it's irresponsible not to at least to address it so that they know. And that way they have the choice of whether they're going, it's not about changing the one accent, it's adding resources or code switching.
That's what I want to hear. And I will tell you guys, the three of you that have done this, when I was presenting the color vowel chart to one of my colleagues who is a native Spanish speaker and having trouble, this is really making a difference. She was just thrilled to see this because she was like, repeat, listen, repeat. And she doesn't have a linguistics background or a language teaching background. She's a dental assistant instructor. So she was thrilled with this, guys. So you guys have really made a huge difference. I just wanted to know that.
Thank you so much. It's gratifying to hear. Hey, I wanted to share, hi, Suzanne, you want to say hello? Or are you waving goodbye?
No, I was just celebrating what she had to say.
Well, hey, I wanted to share a couple of things as we close up the hour. If you are in our community, you'll be able to see more of this. But Liz, who is attending the conference, posted this really neat interface. It's a lot like a spectrogram in a sense, but a little bit of a different interface. This was a screen capture from one of the presentations at the PSLLT, which is what we're talking about today. She was fascinated to see, just how much variation there is in the vowel when different speakers say a word like beat versus
it's our visit pitch.
Yep, it is. It's busy pitch all over again.
Oh wow, I want that.
I wish the colors matched up with the color vowel chart.
Well, can we buy it and change the colors?
Yeah, exactly. I'll work on that. But that's just a glimpse of the kind of thing you get to see at the PSLLT. So if you are interested, I think it's might be too late this time around. I think registration's closed, but if you're new to PSLLT, it's really exciting conference for those of us who do pronunciation. It's kind of a breath of fresh air when you've gone to conferences like, all ESL teachers with this little piece that's pronunciation. This is an entire conference dedicated to pronunciation with a pretty good chunk of it dedicated to English language pronunciation, or relevant to it, let's just say. So that's
what I find fascinating is that a lot of the same principles that we have developed for teaching English pronunciation are transferable to other languages.
That's right.
So
right.
That I think is really cool because I mean it's all about the brain, of course, as I would say.
Yeah, great. Well, I wanted to just finish up and say that this is we have 2 more Fridays at 5 coming up. Those of you who say, what, 2? We have one more next week with Dr. Barr is Ask the Linguist. So we'll be getting into some questions about the brain.
The brain, yes.
I want to see it. Do those pieces come out? You'll show us next week, right?
No, they don't. I wish. Yeah, it's very small.
All right. So we'll be getting into language and the brain some more.
So let me just mention before you completely cut off. I just want to let Nancy know I watched all 3 of those Sanger videos this morning, and it kept running through my brain about how many of my students, when I usually at the beginning of the term ask them why they want to learn English. And a lot of them want to speak with an American accent. And I'm thinking, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. What is the official accent? Well, we don't have an official accent.
Are a lot of them, Doug, are a lot of them from China?
No, most of mine are either Brazilian or Spanish speakers, and I've had a lot of Moroccans lately.
The reason I'm asking is that having lived in Asia for 3.5 years and having Chinese and Asian students at UTEP here in El Paso, their English pretty much wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Until I went to a party in Austin with one of my Moroccan friends who was an Arabic tutor. And this woman walked in, Chinese, beautiful American. I mean, it's perfect. I was like, well, where were you born? Where, you know, what part of the United States were you born in? And all. Well, she was like, had only been here for like 4 or 5 years. And I was like, oh my God, most gorgeous English. Could not believe it. And she told me, and this is about 20 years ago, she said that the Chinese, I don't know if it was the Chinese government or whoever, but that Wiki Kids, and, you know, I know that you guys have some of those teachers that, or VIP Kids or whatever.
VIP Kids,
There's
yeah.
a ton of those companies, and they have hired American teachers en masse to teach. And I am telling you, gorgeous, perfect American English. I'm still good friends with one of my students from UTEP, who was Liang, who was from Beijing, and he now lives in Australia, and I haven't seen him in 20 years, but you know, I couldn't understand, you know, half of what
Simply
he was
having
that-
access, right?
Is
Access.
that gorgeous?
no, I mean, this is what the internet has done, and this is what the Chinese have the same one. And so I was asking, that's the reason I was asking Doug, why? Because
but
I
it's-
was like, why don't you want the British? Because that's, no, we want American. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
It's
smart.
gorgeous American English from what part of the country?
Right.
You know
right.
what? You know what, Doug? I don't know, but she had come to A&M. Texas
But
A&M.
coming back to Doug's question, I think it's a good one, and it's worth when we talk about taking a break over the summer, which we will. Fridays at 5, we'll take a break. I think this would be a great topic to come back to. Is you know, is there a general American accent? What does that really refer to? Is there, you know, we know there is a thing called RP. We could also get into the British and Commonwealth Englishes, but
They're standard.
yeah,
Standard
exactly.
usually
The notion of
good,
standard.
you know.
Could I bring in one thing? I lived in Thailand and Bangkok area for like a year, a long while ago, and everyone there said, well, I understand the Australians much better than I do you. You know, and the British, they're like, no, I don't really understand them, but they felt more comfortable with Australians. That's what.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It just makes
That
sense.
makes sense. There are a lot of Aussies in Australia.
Yeah, in Thailand, there was a lot of Australians in Thailand. Yeah, vacationing, or it's not too far away.
Well, and they do a lot of, I know that Thailand, I remember actually teaching this when I was living in Thailand. I know that Australia has purposely, as a country, looked to bring in international students from other parts of Asia purposely, so that they could have that intercultural business opportunities, that, you know, they know both cultures and all. No, that was done purposely.
Great.
Oh, that's
I'm
why.
going to close things up, folks, by just reminding you a couple of things, because we have 2 weeks left. Know that you can always go to our website. You can go to the training page. That's the best page to sort of see what's up. You can register for upcoming events down below. But if you don't already know about this link or the calendar link, that opens up a document that has details of everything coming up, as well as other notes about what is or is not happening. And if you notice July here, you'll see no Fridays at 5 or Pure English Practice in July. And you'll see that there are no Fridays at 5 in August, right? During that time, though, we plan to send out a weekly highlight of a past session, because we have so many wonderful sessions that have aired. So watch for those. We're going to, you know, have an opportunity for you to subscribe to that piece if you want it, unsubscribe from it if you don't. But we will come back in September with Fridays at 5. But meanwhile, we still have programming. We have courses going on. And especially,
look at Fridays. Ooh.
Yeah, look at Fridays. We have a couple things going on. In July, we've got a wonderful course with Dr. Barr here, teaching literacy, enhancing phonics with color vowel. This is especially relevant for anybody who works with a phonics program like Wilson or Wilson Foundations, or even something like Ways with Words or what have you, where we blend phonics with color vowel to have a kind of wraparound awareness for the learner. We've got a course, let me see here. I'm offering 2 sections of the basics course for anyone you want to tell about that. A lot of you have already been in that course. And and then here in, what are we looking at here? Pure English practice. Okay, in August, we have another section of pronunciation for non-native English speaking teachers, and we're opening that up to advanced non-native speakers who may not be English teachers. So if you know someone who would like to be in a lab class, this is also our class for level 2 coaches who get their coaching practicum in by working with these learners. So it's a true wraparound lab class with mentors and coaches and learners who are all working on English pronunciation strategies, okay? But just visit this and see what interests you, ask questions, and join us again. A week from today is our session with Dr. Barr, which is Ask the Linguist. 1 week after that, I hope you'll join me for one more Fridays at 5, which is the Blue Canoe Success Forum. I spend time on both sides in Blue Canoe and Color Vowel. I've been spending time with data lately, and I could not help but notice that there was this phenomenal group of learners in Singapore who play every day and have been for months. We're talking 6 and 7 days a week playing Blue Canoe, using it, and all with the same teacher. So I had to get in touch, and I won't give it away, but I had a wonderful conversation that I'll be sharing parts of with you 2 weeks from today. Regarding this really interesting group of women in Singapore who use the app daily and continue and will continue. They're very convinced as to why they do it. And so I thought I'd share some of those strategies, that it's not all teacher-led, that when students get it, in their mind that this is useful, they drive themselves to form that habit. And so more on that later. I want to thank you for joining us today, everybody. Thanks for everything you've had to say, and come again. We'll see you next week. Thanks for all the time zone people, all of our travelers now in Japan. Gemma joining us late also. We love having, Jishen, you've joined us from Malaysia today. We love having, from so many different parts of the world, having you here. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you, we hope, next week. Okay. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.